Moi, I would like to start this fourth part of the video titled To the World with a personal comment. As we already have learned, the historical events presented to us as the only truth about our ancient and recent past and that have forged the reality that we are facing today, they have been installed in our memories, not without being previously distorted, twisted and manipulated by parasitic illusionists with the purpose of lowering the human consciousness and make us forget the power and strength of our souls. Instead that learning how to channelize our energies in constructive and artistic direction, the educational institutions are obliging us to study the dirty life and dark achievements of criminals and assassins that from behind the scene are imposing us their poor culture and knowledge. We are a white page of a single-paged book called Life. It is up to us to choose whom will be our teachers and what will be written in that book. But let's start questioning. On the screen at this moment, we can appreciate a very baffling cartographical work. This map is part of a collection of illustration and geographical knowledge attributed to Monte Urbano, whose life belongs between 1544 and 1613, and it's included in the manuscript Wall Map of the World, published in Milan in 1587 with later addition to 1589. This other map, which describes us the world in a very staggeringly similar way, belonged to Gennaro Piccicaro, and it was engraved in ivory in 1597. I have chosen to present you these particular cartographical works for at least three very important reasons and dozens of very logical questions. If we zoom in toward the center of the map, the so-called North Pole, we can clearly appreciate an enormous piece of land. Actually, there are four different islands, called Bargos Islands. We will examine them later on, because what caught my attention is that strange blue color drawing painted on top of the original map. Is it really made by the same cartographer? Because the rest of the areas painted in that color on the map show different shades and lines. As we can appreciate, in the area of the northeast coast of Brazil, there's a very strange mark or drop of ink, and apart from being very similar to the one used at the center of the work, it clearly shows us that it has appeared in a later moment or after the original lines were drawn by Monte Urbano. But this is not the only cartographical work from Monte Urbano giving us these details, because in the same book we can see an incredibly accurate depiction of the northeast coast of Canada, very strangely accurate, painted completely without ice, as the neighboring Greenland, which is painted, as we already have learned in one of the previous parts of this video, full of rivers and mountains, instead that glacier and snow. And the Bargos Island do not have that strange blue circle or whatever it is. We can also see that Gennaro Piccicaro in his map give us the same exact details. There's something huge up there. But the reason why I'm focusing on this possible manipulation of old works is to show you an answer that I've received concerning my question about the strange, out of place or added ice blocks on the old maps of Iceland that I've created in the second part of this video. On the screen we can appreciate some example. Sir Arjuna B. from Malaysia wrote, "Maybe the ice blocks have been inserted due to the news of Iceland icing up. If fakery, they would have done better." The respect that I have for this brilliant mind is beyond description. What a clever conclusion. But if we keep researching this strange lack of glacier and ice in cartographical works predating the 1600s, we stumble upon a very interesting fact, brought to my attention by the channel Weird Publishing, which is the same person that made me familiar with the odd book of Monte Urbano, and it is one of the brilliant minds that I respect the most. If we go check in art, for example, for the date of the appearance of snow in history, we can discover, without much of a surprise, that Wikipedia, the supreme knowledge source, tell us early Europeans painted generally did not depict snow since most of their paintings were of religious subjects. What does it mean? But let's continue. The first artistic representation of snow came in the 15th and 16th centuries. What a coincidence that it's more or less the same time that old maps show us the appearance of a glacier in Iceland, for example. But it can be only a coincidence. But what is very interesting are the last few quotes. The winter of 1564 to 65 was said to be the longest and most severe for more than 100 years. This is extremely interesting. Can you see the illustration on the right side of the screen? We will enlarge it in a moment. The date of the painting is between 1412 and 1416. So we don't have any depiction of snow prior to that date. Then for over 100 years, the winter were not remembered for their harshness till 1564-65, when, as we can continue reading, the beginning of a cold period in Northern Europe now called the Little Ice Age. For the next 150 years, Northern European winters were comparatively snowy and harsh, crop failure having snowfalls and advancing glaciers that consume alpine pasture and villages made the era a grim one for European peasants. On the screen we have the painting from the beginning of 1400, and apart from making me notice for the first time the snow, it also points out that horrendous underwear that the woodcutter have in winter and the efficient way of heating up the most important parts of the human body by those cute people in front of the fire. But let's go back to Montalbano. Before continue investigating his controversial world map, let's make it clear that at least some of the works of Montalbano are difficult to consider genuine to me, because of few observations. The Italian language used in his description is very modern, if compare it, for example, with the one used by Benedetto Bordone in his books, belonging to the same period in history. But I can be mistaken. Second of all, can you see the map on the screen? I've been up and down those areas of Central America for 1 year, and the idea that he do not include in his cartographical works the ancient Maya city of Palenque, Tulum, or Chichen Itza, in fact, he do not include any ancient city in his maps, it raises to me many questions. Because, as we can observe in this other map made by Cortés many decades earlier, the ancient city of Mexico and Mesoamerica were very well known to European cartographers. And third, the account of the people living in South America, and not only in his illustration, depict them as monsters eating human flesh and always at war, violent and primitive in their way of living. I really have a hard time to believe it, observing, for example, the knowledge about ancient astronomical events that those so-called primitive people had. In this description, he wrote, "Whom speak is King Atabalpa of Peru, when in my possession the new world was with the demon unhappy. Now that's your will be light-hearted." Very strange behavior for a king. So let's go back to the world map. Let's have a look at the strange way of painting Antarctica on the map. First of all, it surrounds the known world, and it is not located at the so-called bottom of the planet. Second of all, it is obviously green and full of forests. If we enlarge this section, for example, we can read, it's upside down, that he called it Nova Guinea and Brasilia, and the people living there, as usual, they hate foreigner. So, mystery solved. That's Papua, not Antarctica. Really? If we go check the other section of his wall of islands surrounding the planet, we can observe La Terra del Fuego. So, which part of Australia or New Zealand is this one? That land should not be there. By the way, do you know what is written in the southern point of our days Argentina? Region of the Giants. And here we have another interesting map of Monturbano of the same area. Where are the glaciers? And this one is the map of Gennaro Piccicaro. Look which animals he chose to depict in Antarctica. You can clearly read Circulus Antarcticus. No comment are needed. So let's try to understand a bit these strange ways of depicting Antarctica. In this map, Guillaume Postel in 1578 gave us a very different picture of what he believed is the South Pole. And the same happened with Cornelis de Jode in 1587. It clearly depicts Antarctica as a unique piece of land. By the way, with staggering knowledge about rivers that he painted really inland. How could he know about them? How could all of these cartographers know about Antarctica in any case? Because according to so-called expert historians, Antarctica was discovered only in the 1800s. Interesting. But apart from the size and shape, what calls my attention the most is what is written on the frozen land. It is fertilissima, or very fertile. I know, a lot of people would say, that's Australia, and it was mistaken for our days Antarctica. Fine. The only problem with this theory is that even at the center of Antarctica, he quotes that it is rather easy to explore, and there are no mention of any glacier, and the idea that he could have missed to include in his work those majestic natural frozen wonders, it is at least fishy. So it's not that it matters much the size and shape of Antarctica. In both cases, there's no ice over there. But if we enlarge this really magnificent work, we can discover that also in the case of Cornelis de Jode, in the area of our days North Pole, there are depicted the Bargos Islands. But before researching those, let's call them lost lands, let's have a look at the lands around it. In the area of our days Ciudad de Mexico, we can appreciate Tenochtitlan. There's clearly depicted a lake with a city in it. But what's very baffling are all of those cities or towns depicted all over the extreme top of America. Who was living up there 100 years after those lands were supposedly discovered? Without not even mentioning the enormous quantity of settlement and cities depicted in Tartaria, our day Siberia. I can count at least 20 of them on this map alone, and their existence is supported by the perfection of the mapping of rivers and mountains in those areas. Those lands were explored, not imagined. But due to the topic concerning the previous part of this video, which was the search for answer about all of those dozen of islands depicted in the Atlantic Ocean in old cartographical works, and in our days they are totally vanished, I will dedicate a few seconds in describing the situation of the island of Friesland. I know, everybody knows about it. What a boring subject. Fine, so let's use Friesland for a not geographical reason, but to try to wake up that voice in our brains that scream to us fake info, fraudulent knowledge, and historical hoaxes. The map on the screen is a 1692 to 1694 work made by the cartographer Vincenzo Coronelli. Friesland is depicted with staggering accuracy. There's even an illustration that quotes how fabulous it was. Greenland full of forest and mountains instead of glacier and snow, but we have to keep in mind that Sir Cornelli was primitive, misconcepted, and most probably drunk, confused, so it is pretty normal that the voice in his head was screaming "Lands, Captain, lands," completely deceiving him. Fine, so let's do it. Let's call the expert. Liarpedia. Wikipedia. I'm always agitated when I have to consult the knowledge contained in it, because I keep saying that plenty of the historical figures that are presented to us by Wikipedia, they never existed, or let's say they are phantom. So Friesland is a phantom island. Ouch. Wikipedia is kicking back, but let's continue. Friesland is a phantom island that appears on virtually all the maps of the North Atlantic from the 1560s through the 1660s. In fact, in front of me, I have at least a handful of maps representing Friesland prior of 1560s and a dozen of them showing it after 1660, as the one of Coronelli that I've just shown you, belonging to the last decade of the 1600s, but can be just a small understandable mistake. Let's continue. It originally may have referred to Iceland. I really don't think so. Just look at the map on the screen. Next slide, please. Friesland eventually came to be identified with the Faroe Island. It is unreal. However, Friesland and the Faroe Island both appear on several maps many hundreds of miles apart. What does it mean? But here comes the best part. Friesland appears to be born out of confusion between an imaginary island and the actual southern part of Greenland. So first it was mistaken with Iceland, then with the Faroe Island, then just to be sure to look pathetic enough, it became a misconcepted part of Greenland. The last idea of actually becoming part of Greenland due to sudden movement of tectonic plates, for example, is one of the theories that I've been discussing with the channel Weird Publishing about its disappearing. But Wikipedia have a shocking turn. Even in the mid-18th century, explorers' maps clearly depict Friesland as separated from Greenland by a wide strait. But excuse me, didn't Wikipedia just told us that Friesland was depicted in cartographical works until 1660s? I'm confused. The voice in my head is screaming, shut the computer and start learning how to cook beans. So what Wikipedia is telling us is that at the end of the 1500s, European cartographers knew about Papua. In 1522, they were mapping the various islands of Indonesia, as we can appreciate on the screen, and in 1598, they have entirely mapped the jungle of South America, by the way, 100 years after its so-called discovery. Just for fun, do you know what is written in the area of our days Patagonia, Argentina? Guess. Region of the Giants. So they knew about all of the further areas of the world, but they didn't know what's in front of the coast of Ireland. Look at this map from 1688. They have mapped the entire coast of Quebec and Labrador, but Friesland is depicted out of confusion. Just check out what Pietro de Nobili was imagining of Friesland in 1590. Completely hallucinated. Cities, rivers, mountain, island, fields, obviously the work of a misconcepted psycho. But Friesland is not the only imaginary land in those unknown waters in front of their homes. Here we can see Tile, perfectly mapped. I don't even want to know what Liarpedia think about it. Most probably it was a misconcepted part of Norway. I'm sorry if I bored you up with the legendary Friesland, but let's just for fun check it out how it disappeared from maps. Here we can see Friesland in 1648, and here no sign of Friesland in 1650. Here we can see Friesland in 1613, and here we can see, what's that? What in the world is that sign under Iceland? Oh, come on. Somebody clearly manipulated the map. It's ridiculous. We can still see a small part of Friesland. Who's behind this horrendous work of falsification can just go to work for NASA. But before moving our research to the next phantom topic, I would like to bring back the question concerning all of those small islands depicted all over the world oceans, and that in our days they are clearly no longer there. On the screen at this moment we can appreciate an extremely baffling map. It's referred to the Empire of Prestishan in 1643, and here we have a so-called satellite image from Google Maps of those areas in our days. The difference with today's areas of Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe and Angola are staggering. But if we enlarge the area at the bottom right side of the map, we can observe an enormous quantity of islands. By the way, one of them have clearly written Zanzibar, so it is not that complicated to find that area in a today Google Map image. In fact, as you can see, in our days those islands are still there, but their number is much lower. But we can clearly appreciate them underwater. Can you see how they are just below the ocean level? Can it be that the ocean levels have risen so much in few hundred years? Here we can observe the area of the North Atlantic Ocean in 1600, and here we can appreciate the area where all of those phantom islands lies in our days. Here you can see a map of Finland in 1595, and here we can appreciate Finland in 1646. Clearly the sea level have risen many meters. So when did the ocean level rise so much, and why? The next few images are courtesy of the New Earth channel. Over 1 year ago, I published a video about this strange world lines enigma. 1 year later, I still don't know what they are, but thanks to that video, I've met a brilliant person that lives in northern Alberta, Canada. Well, this person had discovered that those lines get all the way to the ocean and continue underwater. But even more interesting is that this person has found out that the Native American in those areas of north of Canada are choosing their stones where those lines intersect with each other. I found it very interesting, but I will not talk yet about the magnificent research of this person, because he's waiting for the snow to melt away to send me a picture of those Canadian lines that are just everywhere. So I will soon make a video with the latest investigation. But the reason why I'm showing you those lines is because they are obviously flooded. So when did the ocean level rise so much? When were those lines created? In any case, another very interesting proof of rising ocean waters brought to our attention by the New Earth channel is the city of Venice, Italy. That's more or less the area where I was born, even if most of my family comes from the West Balkan area or United States. I think it was 2002 when they decided to clean the canals, and without much of a surprise, they had discovered that those are actually the old streets made in stones. So again, when did the sea levels have risen so much? Because Venice is obviously not thousands of years old. But we will examine this phenomenon in great details in the future. So let's go back to the Empire of Prest Jean in 1643. If we move north on the same map, we can observe that the ocean level is not the only massive change that this planet has gone through in the more and less recent past. In this cartographical work, we can appreciate the areas of our days Somalia, Eritrea, and Yemen. And here, same areas in our days. Where's the desert? Or more appropriate, where are all of those rivers? Here something is deeply wrong with what so-called historians are telling us about the appearance of the desert in the world. I cannot wait to get to the next part of this video that I will dedicate to this strange desertic behavior around the planet. So what about that enormous land in the area of our days North Pole? Well, I would say that first we should start to research the size and shape of our home. To start solving this issue, I would like to call in the classroom one of my favorite teachers. Madame Cathy Dudley is actually the person that made me familiar with whom I will describe as my favorite researcher in this moment. On the screen you can see the logo and name of this channel. Please, I call for help in supporting his works. Well, Madame Cathy wrote, let's put it in this way. I don't believe we live on a globe, as there is so much easy evidence to prove this. What did for me? The pole star never moves. Stars are in the exact same position year after year. Not possible with the number NASA gives the world sun-galaxy spin. Lack of curvature. Water finds its level and cannot be bent. NASA has been proven to be a joke. It's disappointing more people have not really looked into it, as it became obvious rather quickly. The world presented by NASA is the real psyop that allows them to control our reality. I am an ex-teacher, so I did not come to this lightly, although it didn't take me much research either. I don't think we have a grasp of what it really looks like, and can't until all knowledge on this earth is freed up. I personally think that I should bring an apple to Madame Cathy, and that she has really interesting points to discuss. Can it be that the earth is flat? The channel Face of the Earth few months ago sent me a link to an Italian book written in 1959 by Amadeo Giannini, and that I totally forgot the existence. It is called World Beyond the Poles. I strongly recommend the listener to read it. By the way, thank you for all the links and knowledge you have sent me, helping this project to grow and learn. So let's do it. Let's research the flat Earth enigma. Do you know what is written in the illustration of the Monte Urbanos map? This alapamondo is made as a squished ball. Let me try if I understood well. It's a disk. Okay, so let's call the real teachers on this issue.